In the realm of global affairs, no move is accidental, no missile launches by chance, no strike falls upon foreign soil without a deeply rooted plan, a motive that has incubated in silence, behind closed doors, in the minds of those who believe their vision justifies their actions. Iran's decision to attack U.S. bases in Qatar was not born in an emotional whirlwind, but in the stillness of long contemplation. And herein lies a powerful truth. All action, whether in war or peace, whether by individual or by state, is first born in thought. Thought is the origin of all achievement and all destruction. What the world sees today is merely the final step of a sequence that began long before the explosion. Aggression is a strategy, not a slip. It is the outward expression of a definiteness of intent. Just as success is achieved through purpose-driven action, so too is conflict manufactured by the deliberate orchestration of will and desire. A nation, much like an individual, cannot rise or fall without first making the decision to move. This assault is a symptom of calculated energy. It stems from perceived injustices, historic antagonisms, geopolitical tension, and the relentless pursuit of influence in the region. Iran's leadership didn't wake up one morning and press a button. They awakened day after day with a growing belief that confrontation would serve their greater ambition. Behind every missile is not only machinery and fuel, but the fuel of conviction. And in that conviction lies a mirror to the universal law of cause and effect. The law is simple. Thoughts become things. Hostile thoughts, fed by resentment and conviction, become bombs. Peaceful thoughts, fed by understanding and cooperation, become treaties. If you seek to understand why a strike occurs, trace the thread back to the initial seed of thought. You will always find that the idea preceded the event. The hands that built the weapons were guided by the mind that imagined their purpose. This understanding must awaken you. You must recognize that power, in any form, begins with a decision. Whether it is the decision to build or destroy, the genesis is always the same. A man who conquers himself does so with deliberate thought. A nation that unleashes chaos does so with a focused mind that has made war its aim. When intent is clear, action becomes inevitable, but not all clarity is noble. Just as definiteness of purpose can build skyscrapers, liberate peoples, and discover cures, it can also build bombs, incite hatred, and ignite wars. That is why purpose must be shaped by wisdom. A nation with power and no wisdom becomes a danger not only to others but to itself. When Iran decided to strike, they aligned their resources with a thought. That thought became a plan. That plan became a movement. And that movement became a message, not only to their adversaries, but to the entire watching world. Understand this. The events you see on the news are only the surface. Beneath them lies the machinery of minds at work. This is not only a military confrontation. It is an ideological assertion. Iran did not simply attack bases. They announced their will. They declared, "We will not remain silent." And in doing so, they set fire not just to property but to perception. This moment is not just an act of war. It is an act of psychological warfare. It aims to send a signal that they are no longer spectators to American military presence in the Gulf. Their message is not hidden. It screams from the smoke and flames that rise from the desert sands. We have the will, and we will act. This is why purpose matters more than power. Because power without purpose is chaos, but purpose, whether for peace or conflict, creates momentum that shapes history, and now the world watches. It watches not only what missiles destroy, but what beliefs built those missiles. The war is not just physical. It is spiritual, psychological, and strategic. When a nation acts with definite intent, even its smallest gesture becomes amplified. That's why leadership, in times like this, is not about retaliation. It is about direction. For those who understand the laws of success and failure, this is not a surprise. It is the harvest of seeds long planted in the minds of men who chose purpose over passivity, And this leads us to the second truth. Crisis reveals the hidden powers of organized defense and unity. The strike on U.S. bases is not just an attack, it is a test not only of firepower but of fortitude. It challenges the strength of alliances, the clarity of communication, and the discipline of command. In moments of peace, promises are easy, but in moments of crisis, those promises are put to trial. This event did not happen in isolation. The geopolitical chessboard is vast and interconnected, and in this moment, every ally, every base, every military unit must decide what they truly stand for. Crisis, by its nature, demands exposure. It uncovers weakness. It illuminates strength. It shatters illusions. Just as steel is forged in fire, so too is unity forged in the face of danger. When nations are attacked, they respond not only with weapons, but with principles. The principle of sovereignty, the principle of defense, the principle of mutual obligation. The attack on Qatar based U.S. installations is not just an assault on American infrastructure. It is a challenge to every agreement, every treaty, and every shared ideal that holds coalitions together. In the fire of destruction, the truth of alliances is revealed, and it is in such moments that organized defense transcends mere reaction. It becomes an affirmation of order. The greatest empires in history did not crumble because of a single strike. They collapsed because they failed to act in unity when unity was required. Strength is not found in individual might, but in collective discipline. This is the moment when America and its allies must either rise in coordination or fall in confusion. Let us be clear, unity is not automatic. It must be forged, maintained, tested, and proven. This is the silent power behind every great civilization, the ability to operate as one under pressure. Just as in the life of an individual, trials determine who you truly are, so it is with nations. The false show of strength vanishes when the first shot is fired. Only true commitment stands the test of aggression. What Iran did was not only launch missiles, they launched questions directed to every leader, every ally, every strategist. Questions like, how firm is your alliance? How true are your convictions? How disciplined is your command, and more importantly, how prepared are you to respond not just with muscle, but with mind? The attack is a moment of exposure. It reveals more than military vulnerabilities. It reveals the character of nations. Just as crisis reveals a man's strength of spirit, it reveals the soul of a system. Will the leaders of these forces respond with wisdom or with rage, with clarity or with confusion, with unity or with disorder? These are the moments that history remembers, not because of the blast, but because of what followed the blast. Within every crisis lies an opportunity, the opportunity to rally, the opportunity to clarify, the opportunity to reorganize around a shared vision. In this moment, the strength of defense does not lie in brute retaliation, but in intelligent, precise, and measured coordination. Power is nothing without purpose, and defense is nothing without discipline. These are the moments where strategic calm wins over chaotic noise. This attack will pass, but what it leaves behind, its echoes, its questions, its challenges, will shape policies, redefine strategies, and separate the prepared from the pretenders. The future does not belong to the reactionary. It belongs to those who anticipate, organize, and respond with united precision. In this lies the ultimate lesson. Crisis is not the destroyer of power, but the revealer of its true form. When the first explosion echoed across the Gulf, and the earth beneath Qatar trembled under the strike, it wasn't just concrete and steel that fractured. Something invisible but more impactful rippled through the air, fear, and that is the most dangerous consequence of any aggressive act. Fear travels faster than missiles. It seeps into the minds of soldiers, leaders, civilians, and even nations. It paralyzes action, clouds judgment, and invites mistakes. But what most fail to realize is that fear is not a weapon made of fire and iron. It is a creation of the mind. Those who orchestrate conflict understand this deeply. They know that psychological warfare often inflicts more damage than physical confrontation. When Iran made its move, it wasn't merely attempting to weaken infrastructure. It aimed to destabilize confidence. Fear is their silent ally, the one that does the real damage after the smoke clears. But here lies the pivot point of power. While fear may be real, it is only sustained by confusion. Once clarity enters the mind, fear dissolves. This is why clarity is not optional. It is essential. In a moment of sudden chaos, the leader who can see with clarity will not tremble. He will not speak carelessly. He will not issue orders out of emotion. He will gather his mind before he gathers his troops, because the battlefield of war is first fought in the domain of thought. When your mind is under your control, your surroundings, no matter how volatile, become secondary. The storm outside is irrelevant when your spirit stands like granite. In every confrontation, there are those who fall apart and those who fall in line. The only difference between them is the power of thought discipline. The soldier who panics becomes a liability. The commander who thinks with clarity becomes a shield, and the nation that sees through the fog of fear, that refuses to be manipulated by spectacle, becomes untouchable. For when the mind is fortified, no enemy can win, not with bombs, not with terror, not with threats. But to arrive at this place of clarity, a man must train himself long before the attack begins. The time to strengthen your resolve is not during war, but in the silent moments before it. A country, like a man, must discipline its systems, its strategies, and its spirit. Fear only invades when the doors of unpreparedness are left open. When you know who you are and what you stand for, no explosion can redefine your values. Clarity is not simply knowledge. It is conviction purified by preparation. Iran's strike is loud, yes, but the question is not whether it was loud. The question is whether you will let the noise control your reaction. Will you allow the sound of destruction to distract you from the silence of purpose? Because in that silence lies strategy. Fear cannot penetrate a mind anchored in reason. Emotion will always exist, but clarity must reign above it. Emotions fluctuate, clarity commands. That is why fear is temporary, but discipline is permanent. This moment is not just a geopolitical event. It is a test of mental sovereignty. Those who fail this test will react wildly, wasting energy, acting without foresight, turning strength into spectacle. But those who pass it will transform the energy of fear into the fuel of fortitude, because fear cannot live in the same mind where purpose resides. You either surrender to the enemy's illusion or rise through your own intention. The world will reward only one of those paths, which brings us to the fourth truth. No victory is gained without sacrifice, but not all sacrifice is strategic. Sacrifice is a word often romanticized, but rarely understood. It is not the act of giving something up. It is the act of giving something up for something greater. In the pursuit of peace, liberty, or dominance, there must always be a cost. Nothing of significance is achieved freely. But the wise understand that not every loss is worthy, and not every sacrifice is sacred. Iran's act forces nations into choices about retaliation, resources, lives, reputation. There will be sacrifices. There already have been, but the wise strategist asks, are these sacrifices strategic, or are they emotional? A man who gives up his peace for pride gains neither. A nation that responds without aim sacrifices more than it saves. True sacrifice is an investment. It is giving something now for a guaranteed return later. But foolish sacrifice is simply loss disguised as honor. Strategic sacrifice means assessing the landscape with precision. It means asking, what do we want to achieve? What is the purpose behind every move? Are we defending values or reacting to insults? Are we strengthening our position or depleting our advantage? It is easy to become intoxicated by the rush of emotion after an attack. But emotion is not strategy. Emotion is the battlefield, strategy is the war. Only those who separate the two will win in the end. Many will call for swift action. They will say that retaliation must be immediate, that force must be answered with force. But such voices must be met with questions. What is the goal? What are we protecting? Who benefits from this loss? Who profits from a war without a plan? Sacrifice becomes noble only when it secures a future. Otherwise, it is simply the burial of potential under the rubble of impulse. This is a lesson not only for governments, but for individuals. Every success you aim for in life will demand sacrifice. But unless you choose your sacrifices wisely, you will end up giving everything and gaining nothing. You must sacrifice comfort to gain discipline, yes. You must sacrifice leisure to gain mastery, yes. But do not sacrifice peace for pride or reason for rage. The same applies to nations. If the United States sacrifices long, term influence for short, term dominance, it loses the war before it begins. If it sacrifices alliances for ego, or strategy for symbolism, it will find itself alone in the crowd, powerful in weapons, but weak in wisdom. Iran's strike is not merely a challenge of strength. It is a challenge of sacrifice. They have chosen to risk their position, their economy, their diplomacy for a message. Now the counter. Message must be crafted, not just with missiles, but with mind. It must be designed with full awareness of what is at stake. Strategic leaders understand that the greatest power lies not in making moves, but in making meaningful moves. The battlefield is not the place for random action. It is the stage for deliberate sacrifice. This is why, in moments like these, the future is determined not by reaction, but by calculation. The minds that remain calm, clear, and capable will dominate. They will select sacrifices that compound into strength. They will withhold until it matters, then strike with precision, not to prove something, but to protect everything. Just as the greatest champions do not fight every battle, they choose the ones that count. Every step taken now is being watched, by allies, by enemies, by history, and each sacrifice made will either build a future or burn one. The key is understanding the difference. A wise leader does not simply count the cost. He calculates the outcome. He knows that what is lost today must build a stronger tomorrow. That is strategic sacrifice, that is power, that is leadership. Without it, you are a warrior in the dark, swinging blindly, bleeding nobly, and losing quietly in the aftermath of every major conflict. Analysts count the damage, calculate the casualties, and dissect the strategies. But rarely do they measure silence, and yet silence, intentional, deliberate, and focused, is often the most powerful signal of all. The world becomes obsessed with sound, with blaring sirens, explosive detonations, and loud declarations. But those who understand the mechanics of true power know that noise is not strength. Noise is often compensation for weakness. The loudest voice in the room is usually the one that fears being unheard. But the strongest man, the strongest nation, the strongest force, speaks last, and when it does, the world listens. Iran's attack was loud. It was designed to be. Cameras captured it. Satellites traced it. Newsrooms amplified it. And that's exactly what was intended. The world stage today isn't just a battlefield. It's a broadcast. And too often, people confuse visibility with power. But real power has nothing to prove. It does not seek applause, nor does it announce its next move. Real power is crafted in boardrooms, not shouted on battlefields. It is whispered among generals, not screamed in parliaments. It moves in silence, and its effectiveness is found not in how it looks, but in what it causes. Every meaningful transformation begins in stillness. The soil must be undisturbed for seeds to take root, and so it is with power. In moments like this, those who react with noise, quick strikes, public threats, impulsive movements, betray their lack of direction. But those who pause, those who observe, those who prepare in silence, are the ones who strike once and shift history. Intentions shape outcomes more than reactions ever will. The intention behind a move dictates its value. And if that intention is rooted in vision, discipline, and precision, it becomes unstoppable. Think about the most successful empires, the most dominant leaders. They mastered the art of saying less and doing more. The roar of their actions silenced the rumors, the doubts, the noise of opposition. In this current moment, it is tempting to match noise with more noise, but the wise resist that temptation. They understand that retaliation without revelation is a hollow show. But when you move with intention, when your purpose is backed by clarity and your silence is rooted in strategy, you gain leverage that cannot be taken, only feared. This is where the real battle lies, not in the airstrikes or troop deployments, but in the realm of intention. The ones who know why they move, what they aim for, and how far they are willing to go, those are the ones who shape the map. Iran made a move, they revealed their intention. Now the silent power lies in the counter. Move, one that doesn't shout but strikes with surgical precision. One that doesn't seek headlines but alters outcomes. One that doesn't chase applause but commands respect. Noise fades, but the ripple effect of intention continues. Leaders must understand this principle. If you chase temporary attention, you will always be caught in reaction. But if you hold fast to vision, the world will adjust to your silence. Those who make the most noise are often the most afraid of being ignored. But those who are sure of themselves have no such fear. They move without permission. They plan without announcement. And when they act, it is final. And now the sixth principle reveals itself. In times of unrest, those with vision lead while others follow confusion. In a world ablaze with conflict and chatter, vision becomes the rarest and most valuable resource. Vision is not the ability to see the present. It is the discipline to project into the future. Most leaders react to now. Visionary leaders react to 5 years from now. Most nations protect today's borders. Visionary nations protect tomorrow's influence. That difference decides empires. This attack has shattered routine and exposed the fragility of assumptions. Many believed the region was stable, many assumed deterrence was enough, but vision is not built on assumptions. It is built on foresight, anticipation, and design. The true leaders in this moment are not the ones giving speeches. They are the ones drawing maps, revising doctrines, re-strategizing alliances. Their focus is not on retaliation, but on reshaping the rules of engagement entirely. Because unrest is more than violence. It is the void created by uncertainty, and into that void only two kinds of people step, the confused and the visionary. The confused follow, they panic. They try to restore the old rules. They look for familiar answers in unfamiliar times, but the visionary sees unrest as opportunity. Where others see destruction, they see disruption. Where others see a threat, they see a transition. Unrest does not frighten them. It activates them. The visionary understands that now is not the time to rebuild the past, but to reinvent the future. Iran's move, while provocative, is not just an act of aggression. It is a symptom of a shifting world. Old powers are being tested. Old structures are being questioned. The balance is no longer stable. It is fluid, and in fluid environments, only vision provides direction. Those who cling to outdated strategies, outdated partnerships, and outdated assumptions will drown. Those who build new paradigms will lead. In such times, the mediocre mind demands guarantees. It asks, what will happen next? But the visionary mind designs what happens next. It doesn't wait for orders. It becomes the author. That is the power of vision. It writes history while others read headlines. It doesn't rely on luck or legacy. It creates momentum. It defines terms. It shapes the lens through which future generations will study this very moment. Leadership in times of unrest cannot rely on tradition. It must rely on transformation. You do not survive a new storm with old maps. You chart new paths. You gather the right people. You cultivate resilience not just in weapons, but in wisdom. Because leadership is not about managing peace, it is about navigating chaos. Anyone can look strong when the world is stable, but only the visionary appears calm when the ground shakes beneath him. Those who lead now must do so from a higher level of consciousness. They must remove themselves from the noise, from the politics of performance, and from the theater of reaction. Instead, they must root themselves in clarity, rise above public pressure, and focus on strategic outcomes that will outlast this crisis. Because vision is not reactive, it is generative. It creates paths where others see cliffs. It builds bridges where others build bunkers. Iran's strike was an attempt to alter the equation. But vision does not respond to variables. It creates new formulas. And it understands something the reactionary never will. Power without foresight is fragile. Just as a man without purpose falls to distraction, a nation without vision falls to division. Unrest reveals this truth like a torch in the dark. The battlefield of modern power is not only measured in miles conquered or bases destroyed, it is measured in the architecture of future control. The leaders who possess this vision will not be the ones seeking revenge. They will be the ones building realities. They will not be driven by fear. They will be driven by insight. They will not chase noise. They will define silence. In a world that has grown addicted to urgency, they will embody patience. In a world that craves spectacle, they will create substance. In a world that celebrates appearances, they will command outcomes. These are the leaders history remembers, not because they shouted the loudest, but because they saw the farthest. The attack on U.S. bases in Qatar is more than a military event. It is a test of thought, intention, leadership, and vision. True power lies not in noise but in clarity, not in reaction but in strategy. Fear may shake the moment, but purpose shapes the future. Victory belongs to those who move with discipline, sacrifice wisely, remain calm in chaos, and lead with vision. In a world driven by confusion and noise, the quiet strength of intentional leadership will always prevail. Those who understand this will not just survive, they will redefine the future in their own deliberate image.